Welcome to the Uncomfortable Conversations podcast, the untold stories of the 3HO Kundalini Yoga community. My name is Guru Nishan, and I'm the host of the podcast. At the beginning of every episode, I like to share the intentions for why I started this podcast. Number one, to break the veil of silence that has long permeated and continues to strangle the 3HO Kundalini Yoga community in the name of neutrality. Number two, to validate and help clarify the complex feelings of those who have joined this lifestyle, were born and raised into it, and or who have practiced or taught Kundalini Yoga. Number three, to encourage active listening to uncomfortable conversations from our community as a revolutionary act of self and collective healing. Number four, to let survivors know that we see them, we believe them, we love them, and we will fight for their truth to be addressed. Number five, to let teachers who are denying, gaslighting, or spiritually bypassing know that what they are doing is willfully ignorant and re-traumatizing victims. Number six, to illuminate the inherent racism, homophobia, cultural appropriation, and exploitation that perpetuates the teachings, 3HO lifestyle, and overall community ethos. Number seven, to stop the perpetuation of gaslighting and victim shaming by naming it for what it is. Number eight, to dismantle internalized shame, guilt, toxic positivity, and light-washing mentality. Number nine, to honor all of the parts of ourselves that have been forgotten or silenced. Number 10, to honor every body that has come through our community, both named and unnamed. And number 11, to encourage people to do their own research, process their own emotions, get somatic therapy and other therapy and support as needed, to draw your own conclusions, and to be critical thinkers rather than to just blindly follow anyone. Your story matters. Please share it when you're ready. We're here to listen and to support you. On today's podcast, we actually have Jules Hartley back for a part 2. And just as a refresher, she joined 3HO in 2011, changed her name to Amrita Kaur, and actively participated as a Kundalini Yoga teacher, worked for White Tantric Yoga, Health&Humanology, Golden Bridge Yoga, Nine Treasures Yoga, and performed work exchange for KRI, Kundalini Research Institute, and 3HO, and did seva at the RaMa Institute, as well as the Guru Ram Das Ashram in LA, through the end of 2018 when she left. You can go back and listen to the previous podcast to be able to really get the foundation of her background and the initial story, because I feel like on our initial episode, we really covered the foundation of how Jules came into 3HO and started practicing yoga and kind of went through what I call the marketing system or the marketing funnel of 3HO into Siki. And it really begins with a yoga class and then solstice. And it continues through the act of seva in any aspect of it. And you really painted that picture quite well. So go back and listen to the first episode to really get the foundation. On today, we are having her back for part 2 to really hone in on some more of the details and stories that she has. She really filled in a lot in regards to her time at Golden Bridge, Guru Ram Das Ashram in Los Angeles and doing seva there, RaMa and Hari Jiwan and kind of the inner circle he was creating, and just kind of these early years where these kind of spawn cults were kind of growing off of 3HO from some of these legacy teachers. And Jules, I know you just have a lot more that you wanted to cover. And so thank you for coming back.
Yeah, you're quite welcome. Thank you for having me back.
So we wrapped up by you telling us that by 2018, you were pretty much starting to poke holes, but then by 2020, a lot more came out. And you ended up being a real strong voice in 2020, really speaking out, and your voice is out there in different platforms for that. But I also know that you spent a lot of time, you really gave us a lot of inside scoop on your time at Golden Bridge and just the inner workings, what was happening there, the teacher training, and all of the commitment that you were on a fast track into service, seva, and growth in Kundalini yoga, and then that bubble popped. So any more that you want to share in terms of from 2018 to now, or do you want to really go into more of your relationship with your time at Nine Treasures and Tej?
Yeah, I think probably a little bit more of the latter because my time since 2018 has been mostly about integrating back into the normal world and what that's looked like. And we can talk about that a bit too. But I think it's important to there's some things I'd like to address about, just sort of what was the glue that kind of held me there in those positions that I had. And I think a good way to parlay into that would be, I listened back to our recording for the part 1, and you had asked me, okay, so were you wearing a turban then? Did you take your turban off? And it's such a, that's such a demarcating, I think within this community. I mean, that's such a moment, are you still wearing the turban? And I was looking back through some old pictures and remembering I ran around with the turban on whenever I could. I lived in an interesting paradigm because it was kind of I felt like I had a dual life. My career was as an actress, and as an actress, you're portraying other characters, and these characters are not in 3HO. None of them are. So none of them are going to be wearing that costume. None of them are going to be wearing that turban. And culturally, women in the West, shave our legs and wear makeup and pluck the eyebrows and do things like that. So I was always very torn about the physical, like the manifestation outwardly of what I should be doing. To give you an idea, by 2015, 2016, I was doing Panchbanya. I was doing 2.5 hour meditations when I could, at least definitely a 31-minute, like heavy Kriya, and trying to go to a Kundalini yoga class every single day if I could.
Wow.
So I was very in it, yet, yes, there were jobs that I had that I would try to keep cash as much as I could. So, but I would get a job here or there and they'd maybe trim my hair or ask me to shave my legs. I said, you need to come back tomorrow and have your legs shaved.
So here you are living, you're saying keep cash. I mean, you're referring to the 5Ks. You're referring to practices of the Sikh culture, no?
Yes. And that was something that I thought was really beautiful and really wanted to delve into. And we talked about this fast track that I was on. I was ready to take Amrit in 2012, like not even a year in. I was like, I'm going to do this. And that was, I think that was really this influence of that, what is now the RaMa group. There was this culture within that of just doing that, of going all in, that in order to just keep going and get ever higher, you had to just dive in and do it. And what's the next level? It was just kind of what we did. I don't want to say like Harjivan was like a slave driver, but that's kind of the energy that it was. It was very much go, 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 go. And it was actually a second gen individual in New Mexico. Him, his friends, his brother, they kind of all talked to me and very gently. And it was really a kind thing that they did because they were Sikh. They identified as Sikh.
Yeah.
They said, somebody pointed out a video to me of like people in India taking Amrit, and they were all in their 70s, 80s. They were much older at the Golden Temple. And I commented on that. I said, why is everybody who's taking Amrit here old? Like, these are old people. I'm used to going, at solstice or at Guru Ram Das Ashram, everybody's young. They're all 28 years older. And they said, well, it's almost more of an honor to your life and how you have lived. And maybe also for them, it's sort of, it's like, look, not to quote Yogi Bhajan, but I'm living to die, or I understand death is coming. And this is the paradigm within which I live spiritually. This is what I believe. It's extremely different. It's, a cultural and then a true spiritual thing that has to relate to, yes, like what your relationship is as a spirit in this world, spiritual, whatever. It wasn't a bunch of 20 somethings wearing all white, taking Amrit. That's what I saw. Like, I realized that it was different. And so I kind of thought, huh. And then also somebody pointed out, you're still working as an actress. Do you still want to work as an actress? I said, yeah, that's my career. That's what I do. That's who I am. That's my dream. And in that, it was, okay, well, you're probably not going to be able to keep your hair, your body hair. You're not going to be able to have hair down to your knees unless you only play characters like that. And it would have been really cool, had maybe I done some kind of neat period piece or like a Game of Thrones, something where I could have had hair down.
But what they're pointing out is that you don't actually have that commitment in your life, but that you were getting caught up in the mythology or the fantastical pathway to, like, this is the next way to grow. And I want to point out that you're talking about second gen that had committed themselves to this lifestyle in their way, and they're learning, and they're coming to you as a committed yoga student convert, and how common this story is for those of us born in, like how much we've seen yoga students come in and then change their life and blah, 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 blah. And how this is actually a much larger formula of 3HO and what Yogi Bhajan said as a foundation that I'm hearing you say you got within the confines and network of Hari Jiwan's influence, and that, but it really was a much larger influence that had been a set foundation that 3HO I've just heard other stories like yours, and I witnessed other students kind of be on this fast track to enlightenment by becoming committed Sikhs. And I always asked from 2016, why does the teacher training teach that the fastest way, that the best, highest path is to go from yoga student to becoming a Sikh? Like, why are they conflated? Because one should be able to practice yoga without, and I think that's what you're pointing out, I guess, is like, wow, these students came to you and said, are you sure you want to do this? Have you really thought this through? That kind of thing.
There also, though, okay, so I always felt, like I said, torn, or like I was in this dual life, because inwardly and in all my extra work activities, which was most of my time. So what my life looked like then was I would, on average, maybe I was working, I don't know, it depended on the week, but maybe like 8-12 hours a week. The rest of the time was 3HO and related and yoga.
Totally.
So,
I get it.
and that was almost 100% volunteer work.
Mm.
I was so broke. I mean, I was just on the edge. I was constantly having to ask my family to spot me this or that amount for rent, or asking my dad, can I do more hours of work for your company? because I run the financial aspects of his company. And more over the years, I have done more of that. But saying, you know, like, hey, do you have any reports I could type up? Is there any hours I could put in? I was just always on the edge. And I wasn't the only one. We all were. And then
Exactly. Pin in that. We all were. And historically, we all were, right? Like this is a part of the formula. So the fact that in 2011, this is a part of the systems training, right? To kind of create more and more dedication, more and more devotion through this broke state, you know, keep going.
So, you know, and I had brought up the fact that what I wanted more than anything was to find a relationship with a man and start building a life and a family. And I'm in my late 20s. And I remember, so in 2012, Tej, I said to her, I said, you know, can we talk about a few things? I want to talk about, you know, what this means. Cause I really want to find a husband. And I said the same to Harajiwan, because I had noticed that they had kind of done all these kind of arranged marriages, right? So it was like, hey guys, you know, make me a match. Like, here I am. And so Tej said, well, let's do a counseling session. And others had tried to get me to do, students of Harajiwan had tried to get me to do a counseling session with Harajiwan. Didn't resonate. I was like, I don't know about that. You know, to sit one-on-one with him, I don't know. Something about it just never, so I never did that. But I did go do this session with Tej, and actually she did not charge me for it. I think at the time she was charging $154 for a session. She claimed she has a master's in psychology, I believe. So I thought, oh, well, she's got a credential. You know, how weird could this be? The first thing she says to me is, well, why don't you just go to New Mexico and marry one of those second gen guys? Okay. You know, she said, well, certainly there's got to be a guy around here somewhere for you. Someone who's within your, you know, age, you know, 5 to 10 years on either end, or even older. There's got to be somebody who you resonate with. And the fact of the matter was, there actually were not that many men around at the solstice. I'd say 80 to 85% of the people there were women. The demographic was mostly middle-aged women. And then the men who were around, who were more my age, a lot of the yogis they identified as not being heterosexual. So there was that component to it. And then the ones who were sort of the second gen. Okay, so most of the second gen, I remember being like, where is this second gen? Because there aren't a whole lot here. There's got to be more. I know all these 60, 70 something year olds have had kids that are my age. Where are they? Where are they? There's got to be guys. And I remember asking some of the other second gen people, and, you know, they all just shrugged their shoulders. I don't know. They just don't show up, you know. Well, now we know. Now we know kind of more, you know, the backstory and what all went on, and it made more sense. The ones that were left who were following the teachings and being good students, good Sikhs, they were all broke as a joke. They didn't have careers. They didn't have money. And to me, seeing that, I was like, well, you know, I'm not, I don't have money right now. And how would we survive, you know, this person who's, let's say, working for SeekNet. You're not having a 6-figure salary working for SeekNet, let's be honest, or working for one of the other, you know, working for this guy's jewelry business, or it's the same story. And I just was like, none of these are suitable partners, even though they are devoted to this lifestyle and it's really beautiful. Like, I'm not looking to build with that. Mm-hmm. So I was in a conundrum, but I wanted to point that out. This is back to we're all kind of kept in this financial stuckness. Meanwhile, it's chanting all these Bonnies, you know,
prosperity meditations.
Narayan. Okay, the Narayan mantra playing. Like,
you know, and it's always our own. It must be our own thing, you know. And it's fascinating that like I wasn't at any of these solstices that you're talking about, but what I want to remember is that you're talking about in 2012. This is just a year in for you, and you're already like, think about how powerful a system of of devotion and commitment, right? Within 1 year transformative period. And then in 2012, you're already wanting to, get married. And this is a part of your own desire before, but it's also a part of the ethos of the community. And to look around and to realize really fast that the path is like this. And, I think about stories like my sister-in-law or, um, Sagun, just different people, that were yoga students and how fast they moved into that track of devotion, seva, teacher training, change the name, wear a turban, get married, have children, blah, 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 take Amrit, and it's like, and it's like, oh, geez, not too long later. Well, how did I get here?
I think another thing that just came into my mind is looking around at those second gens who were left.
Yeah.
There was, okay, and I've said this before on other podcasts. So we're talking about this, what is the glue? What is it that keeps you there? There is such, and we've touched upon it, such an aspect of guilt and shame. And it was palpable. It was palpable when I was speaking to these people, because you're always never doing enough. And I want to speak to that within my own experience, because there I was trying to wear a turban, everywhere, trying to do the flowing chuni as much as I could, trying to do the bonnies and all of it, and just never feeling like I was perfect enough. I'm trying to pull up a picture here to show you what I actually kind of looked like towards the end of my time in 2018, because I thought that, I thought I was doing pretty well. I was like this, what my turban looks nice.
It's so, yeah, exactly. I want to point this out. It's so fascinating to me. I started teaching around 2011, 12, right? And this is when
Okay.
you're joining. And I remember just being fascinated because, I was started teaching for my own reasons and my own unpacking. Is this the picture?
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty nice
Look at
3HO
that
turban.
turban. Look at that
Oh,
turban.
that's
That's
a
no
pretty
yoga
nice little,
student, huh, folks?
that
That's
is no
no.
yoga student. This is a nice, devoted 3HO
Oh,
sick woman
that could be
bowing at
right
the
out of,
feet of
that
the
could be
Guru.
1970.
Right. And then here I am, reading Gurmukhi. There I am.
Back up, back it up a little bit. Look at that beautiful picture. This could
Yeah.
be like, again, I want to just point out how an ethos or a mythology or a system creates this kind of,
There I am at a Netflix event with a man who is Punjabi Sikh. But you can see I would wear normal street clothes and a turban. I had
and
a
a
way of
turban
doing
though.
it.
I met so many
Styling.
yoga students like you, and it made me so fascinated. And I started really looking into watching, and this is where I had started getting that terminology. I had come from a network marketing business, so my frame of reference was like, wow, there's a marketing funnel to get people from point A, which is take your first yoga class, to over. And I would watch people go and start wearing a turban and then change their name and then get tattoos of Adi Shaktis on their body,
That
and
was
then put their, and I know you know what I'm talking about, right? And then want to take Amrit and then fly across the country taking classes and teacher trainings. And what you're saying, this devotional commitment to brokenness. But as long as you're doing enough sadhana and committing enough, and it reminded me so much of what I didn't enjoy as a child, but I stayed in it to watch and to witness so that it could deconstruct out of me. But to listen to you tell your story is like parallel this time for me of noticing
Mhm.
yoga students like you be on this fast track marketing funnel to ultimate devotion, and the highest path would be marriage. you know, marriage and having taken
And
Amrit
having a
and having to
child, and
having a child, but having taken Amrit, like full devotion and so anybody in any community would be like, oh, what a wonderful student you are, because you've gone the full way in.
what a beautiful Sikh woman, And but okay, so along these lines, by the time those pictures were taken in 2018, I mean, you saw what I looked like.
Amazing.
Yeah, but it's like if I show up like that, what dharmic business isn't going to hire me? That's kind of how I felt, because I was like, well, if I'm going, because I was like, look, if I'm going to give up my acting career, or if I'm going to take Umrit and like move in this direction, which means I won't be able to continue doing acting and modeling because of my hair, eyebrows, legs, etc., literally because of the hair and the makeup, then I need to have a career path that's within these businesses.
And you thought that working for one of the companies like would be a financially stable thing? Like in your mind, you thought that would be good?
I thought if I had maybe a couple jobs, yeah, sure, I could make it happen. And then of course getting married to somebody who's also working. So this was I mean, well, yeah, I mean, like
Well,
how else are you gonna make it work?
that's the painted picture, I got it.
Yeah. So, but what I came up against was nobody would let me in. Nobody would trust me, because who was I? I was this yoga student who, okay, she's very devoted. She's done tons of seva. She shows up and she's here, but the second gen always were going to be way ahead of me in line at the door. And I mean, it's nepotism. I completely understand it. But what I'm trying to point out is that I literally had nowhere to go. I mean, and that's why I was saying I was butting my head against that corner. There was I couldn't go right. I couldn't go left. I couldn't go up. I was just stuck.
And
And
you were wanting to take the level 3 at this point?
oh, I took the level 3 in 2012.
You did. So you did level 3, and that's several years. Isn't that a 3-year process of seva and all those kinds of things?
I did not do the teacher training track. Hold on one second. I'm going to be right
Got
back.
it. I understand. Okay.
So as I was saying, I didn't do the Teachers Academy. Was it the Aquarian Teachers Academy? I don't remember.
That's
Whatever
the 3. That's like the level 3 according to KRI, which is like this whole Aquarian Academy and all that. So
And you do the
you went
1,000
into a
day
different.
sadhana. Yeah. So I basically what I did is I simply attended the level 2s and attended the level 3, but without the accreditation to move into being a teacher trainer. And the reason is because Harjiwan had said, you don't need to do this.
He's already starting to create his own system outside of KRI. And remember, folks, at 2020, they seceded and left the whole the being underneath KRI. But go ahead.
So side note there, I would like to point out, I know for a fact there were several people who had made formal complaints through EPS about him and what he was doing. They were all ignored. They were all brushed aside. They were all just, nothing came of it. And why? Why? Because he was doing teacher trainings that had hundreds of students, particularly now in Russia, Eastern Europe. Each one of those, what is the fee that goes to KRI? So he's raking in a certain amount financially for KRI. They're not going to cut him off.
So for years, they just continually accepted it, and even though they were getting complaints?
Correct.
So it wasn't until later that EPS started to actually follow through on some complaints?
Oh, they never did. I think it got to a point where maybe they started to in 2020, or just because of everything that was going on, Harjiwan said, look, we can't be associated with these people anymore. They're a sinking ship. They're a dumpster fire. Let's get out of here.
Interesting.
But
And I know supposedly EPS, has some restructuring that has happened since 2020. So it's like they've never really had it super together and are still just trying to get things going and put in new systems perhaps. But there's just years and years and years of multiple stories that have never got investigated, of multiple different teachers in multiple different countries.
Correct.
So it's interesting.
It's interesting, and it's very sad, and
Yes.
it's damning. It's beyond, like, there are no words for how frustrating that is for all of the voices who were trying to speak up and who went into the work and the vulnerability and of going into that share and reaching out for help, and then got absolutely nothing. So,
And no wonder, pin a pin in that, no wonder it's so hard for a lot of these folks to come forward and tell their story now, because it's
yeah,
extremely painful to tell your story and to have nothing happen to it, and have these organizations continually accept money for teacher trainings that a lot of these teachers have proven over and over again from multiple students to be predatory in a multitude of different ways. And what are students supposed to do if the accountability of the organization supposedly running it has no accountability system? And it's not enough to say, well, EPS is getting restructured. I think the person that was the head of it took a leave and somebody else is in place temporarily for a year. It's like,
of course.
where is their resolution? And this is not new. This is how YB handled all predatory patterns that were ever reported. Is it got brushed under the rug, people got silenced and shamed, people got
Yep.
slandered and then
Yep.
kicked out. And this is a long foundational history of patterns. And what makes anybody think that calling something EPS and putting some temporary devoted free labor workers, underage workers, as a part of the supposed organization that holds people accountable, that doesn't hold anybody accountable, because these teachers continually carry on in predatory ways in the name of Kundalini Research Institute. And
And
that's
I'm
the
just,
yoga of awareness, by the way. Okay, go ahead.
yes, the yoga of awareness.
And the fastest way to consciousness. And it's a householder's yoga. Let's not forget, because we're integrated in everyday life. And so it's just so important to be, a householder and care for our family. Yeah.
And I also, in 2020, I contacted Yoga Alliance because I thought there's got to be some recourse above. And now that this is more there's actual written stuff out there, detailing the abuses, there has to be some kind of recourse. And what I found out was that KRI was grandfathered in as something that had sprung up in the 60s or 70s. So it had never actually gone under review or investigation for some reason, and they were up for renewal. I don't know where things stand now, but the fact is that because I thought, okay, well, now this RaMa world has zero recourse. And I'm thinking back and I'm remembering, just as we're talking, more and more and more students of Hari G1s, young, beautiful women who had just moved to LA, who got on this fast track, maybe even took Amrit, were hanging out with him, were holding his hand by his side, that just disappeared. There one day doing tantric with him, and then poof, gone. And we'd be like, what happened to Dave G? What happened to, Harnam? What happened to these students? What do you think happened?
Folks, don't forget we're talking about 2011 to 2018. Wow.
Okay. So back to this idea of me not trying to figure out vocationally what I'm doing, because also there's the path of becoming a yoga teacher full-time, which a couple people in LA had done. However, they had done it with the assistance of the community. There's one woman in particular who I'm thinking of who married into the community, and so then kind of got a big boost and a jump and a hand and being kind of propelled forward in the Aquarian Academy and all of that, to have those letters or bolster after her name, whatever. There was a couple people like that who really kind of married in, put in their time, really got into the community, and were eking out an existence in Los Angeles. But still, I think with the help of being in a marriage, a partnership financially, it's not really, I don't know that it's really possible to be a full-time Kundalini yoga teacher and truly have a thriving, bustling, booming career. Gurmukh was doing it, Tej was doing it, Harjiwan was doing it, but they were hustling and they'd been at this for decades, and it was a different kind of thing that they'd put together, and they kind of got in at a different time foundationally to kind of create that. So what I'm saying is I recognize that that was going to be a difficult path, and I'm trying to figure out what to do. So I had been doing seva at Golden Bridge. Finally, after 15 months of free labor, I had been, asking, can I get hired on as, I think they called them front desk managers. And I have to point out that I found out maybe last year or 2 years ago from somebody else who had been working there at the time that the reason that I had not been hired sooner is because they didn't feel like I was committed enough to the position at Golden Bridge, because there were times when I had shown up a little bit late for my volunteer job to like sweep around the shoes and put the shoes in the cubby hole or make sure that there was enough tea for everybody. Yeah, if I was 5 minutes late for that, I mean,
It's your devotion, G. It's about your devotion.
Okay. And while I was in that seva world, and there was sort of this desperate vying for these coveted front desk positions, mind you, $10 an hour minus taxes, minus federal, California, and Los Angeles taxes. So after that, you're getting like $6.56 an hour. It wasn't exactly a very labor heavy job. Most of the time we kind of just sat there on the computers and kind of just organized stuff. But when there was an event or class, there was an awful lot of work that did have to be done. And while I was in that seva position, I was bullied. There were people who were higher up in the structure at Golden Bridge who would just come down and there's one woman in particular who was so nasty to me. I don't remember exactly, but there was like a basket with like some hair ties in it that were being sold in the store that we had there or something. And she just like shoves it at me. And she was like, "These aren't organized right," and I was like, okay, I'll organize them, I guess. And I don't remember how she said it, but it was just like, you don't do anything right. Like there was that kind of shaming, guilting, making you feel not good about yourself or trying to find that. And I cried. I remember crying. And I remember Tej actually saw me, and she knew me because I came to every last one of her classes, of course. And she was like, "Well, what's going on?" And I was like, "Well, this woman said to me," and she's like, and so Tej goes, "That's your mother issues right there. That's your mother issues." And I was like, okay. Anyway, so I finally get hired on, but right as that whole schism is happening, with Tej and Harjiwan leaving. Can you hear me with the crows in the background here?
Yeah, we can hear you just fine.
Okay. It's maybe ironic, but I was listening to some Tej recordings because I have hundreds of hours of them from these years. I was listening to them yesterday, and in one of the ones I heard, she was talking about crows and when there's a flock of crows, like, what does it mean? Well, and then here's another thing, like, adding extra meaning to things in a mystical or psychic sense, she would call it. maybe they're just crows. Maybe the planets are just moving in their orbits. Does it have to mean anything? Does it have to mean that, oh no, it's the dark spirits that are out there, they're coming, this means we need to psychically clear your aura? Mercury is in retrograde and Venus is going into retrograde. That means we have to do the meditation to clear past lovers, whatever, right?
I don't know. Keep telling us. I want to hear it. I'm like, what is going on?
10/10, October 10th is coming up. It's the 10 portal of Guru Gobind Singh, and we're going to expand our aura to be so bright and bring in the warrior energy. Fateh, you know. But there was always some reason why we had to be meditating then and there, you know, why it was so dire and so urgent and so necessary for you. Whew. Okay, so I'm finally hired on at Golden Bridge. I start to attend Tasia's classes, and I was broke, and I didn't want to be paying for classes at Nine Treasures as well. So there was a woman there who said, oh, okay, well, you can start doing sweeping seva, you know, sweep the floor, and she'll let you attend the class for free at Nine Treasures. So I started doing seva there, which then turned into doing front desk seva for her. And then that turned into teaching some of her classes when she wasn't there, and having lunch with her and going over certain things in Mind Body, because I was learning Mind Body, the software that we were using to check in the yoga students. I had learned it being at Golden Bridge. So she was kind of picking my brain and getting me to show her the ins and outs and the tricks of Mind Body. She had a woman who I was becoming friendly with at the time, who was doing seva there at Nine Treasures as well. And that woman had pretty much only ever had relationships with women. I'm going to shut the doors just so you can hear me, because the crows are really loud. So I'm becoming friendly with all the people that are going to Nine Treasures. And, you know, there's this one lady, and I'm friends with her too. And like I said, she had been somebody who had pursued relationships with women. Mind you, up to this point in my life, I had only ever had boyfriends. I'd only had relationships with men. And I think maybe there was like 2 times in college where I was at like a very raucous bar party where I had like made out with the girl so that somebody could take a picture of it, you know. But I didn't consider myself gay or, you know, physically sexually attracted to women or wanting to have an intimate romantic relationship with women. I just didn't consider myself that orientation of sexuality. Mind you, I am now a couple of years into this. You know, I haven't had a boyfriend, and, you know, I am seeking a romantic, intimate relationship in my life. So Tej, you know, everything that she would say to us was like, if she said something to you, it meant you were so special, that you were able to get this pearl of wisdom, this download from the master. And I'm gonna like, maybe if we can, I'll play a couple examples of her here that I have as a recording. But
I want to point out one thing that is so interesting. In 2011, I had come back to Chicago, and one of the girls in my sales team, I was selling wellness products at the time. One of those girls in my low grade sales team, she had practiced Kundalini yoga when she lived in LA and got all into her teacher, and her teacher was also Tej. And I remember this is before I, you know, started teaching. I'd already done teacher training for my own well-being, but I wasn't teaching to others. And I remember the goo goo gaga nature of her relationship to Tej. Like, she loved her. So what you just said made so much sense. It was kind of like people would just be in awe of the personal messages that they got directly from their teacher, Tej.
Well, okay, and I'll put my stories on pause, so we'll come back to it. But I mean, you can just hear here. So this is her class. Everybody's clapping. Can you hear that?
Yep.
Everybody's laughing at everything she's saying.
Great. Well, I found out I was supposed to bring gifts.
So she's allowing people to talk at the beginning of class, like talk about where they're at, what they're doing. It's building community. This is our family.
All right. So everybody can know you. All you guys say your name. We'll start with you.
And then introducing the new students.
Say something special about yourself.
Oh, I'm Ginger Quartz, and my spiritual name is Guru Ram Das Ashram.
My spiritual name is.
I was studying with Tej,
I've been studying with Tej for a year. My spiritual name is this. Everybody clap.
I love this community, and I just think that it's so uplifting.
It's so uplifting. I love this community, you know, but this is because we're all bypassing. We're not actually addressing anything. We're just getting high on the yoga.
And this is pre-class or post-class?
This is pre-class.
This is
But sometimes
pre-class
post-class is what
before,
happens.
say, tuning in, right? It's like everybody's there. She comes on the stage and everybody's sitting there and it's like, ooh.
Yeah, and everything Tej would say, everybody's clapping, laughing, you know, it's just so it's oh my gosh, that's so funny, isn't she cute? And she kind of, I think people put this kind of grandmother persona onto her, you know, the grandmother I never had, you know, the wise woman, the Yoda grandmother. I didn't
And let's remember, folks, you know, Tej doesn't carry the young, skinny, pretty yoga teacher princess persona. She is a totally different category, right? She's, you know, more frumpy and her turban's kind of like sunk in onto her head, and she has really thick glasses, and it is, and yet that, what did you say? It's kind of that wise woman Yoda persona. And there's some I found it so fascinating to kind of look at the celebrity like following she had then and obviously still has today.
So I'm going to try to find, there was a point, let's see. Okay, I think it was at 8:47 here. Hold on. Okay.
If you want to say something, as long as it's short, you're very verbal and you have to start being more aware. Okay, go ahead.
So just right there, I don't know if you heard that. So the student is like, oh, can I say something? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah.
Hear me. Okay. And so then Tej says, you're very verbal, so you need to be short. So there's these, but see, that's a download. So when
stop. You're referring to language she uses as a download, meaning she got a personal download for that student, as if Tej is getting this bit of wisdom and then she's shooting it out to this person. She's saying something, you need to keep it short. So she's commanding her based on whatever energy she picked up, supposedly.
Correct. Exactly. And there's another one in here. If I can find it, I'm going to just pull up this other recording. But what I'm trying to point out is, you know, here's a very eager student who's so excited to be with her family and community at a 9:20 in the morning on a Wednesday in LA. Like, oh yes, you know, here I am, this huge city, but I've got friends, I've got family. We're going to feel good together, you know, hold hands, laugh, smile, sat nam. Bypass. But
and tying in other mystical, astrological, numerological, fantastical stories that create a web of influence, and then tie it together with the camaraderie, the introduction, a sense of feeling seen, heard, felt, listened to, and then commanded. Like, who doesn't want to be commanded by somebody who sees something in them that they don't see in themselves yet? Good or bad, there's some sort of like addictive draw of having a teacher see you. And then you're within an ethos of teachings that say there's nothing higher for your soul than to find a teacher. So to have a teacher that can penetrate and see into your fucking soul, like hook, line, and sinker in LA, because she can then weave it on top of all of the other trendy ways that people are fed by their insecurities.
and Demi Moore and Belinda Carlisle are sitting right next to you, and you know who these people are. And so, and then Tage is saying, Demi is doing so great. She's been doing the meditations with me. Isn't that right? And then, she sits there, doesn't really do anything, but she's like, this is just so great. And we have Belinda, who's so talented, giving her talents to us. We are so lucky, look how special we are. But then, so I want to go back to what she said to that woman. That's like a very small example of it. I haven't listened to all these hundreds of hours to find a more perhaps potent example, and I probably will. But here she is saying like, oh, we're such a special family. This is Sarah. Sarah, how's your work been going? Great. I just got a new job on a new TV show. Sarah has been doing the 40-day prosperity meditation. Look at Sarah, and so, but you see how this is happening at the beginning of every class. And as you said, being seen. But so she goes to that one student who was like, oh, can I share something? Mind you, every single last one of us in there probably has some major attachment trauma with parents, but with mothers, our first caregivers. We were not seen on some level. That's why we're there. You're not in this class if you
That's not a powerful download. That's just an obvious is what you're trying to say.
No, what I'm trying to say is that there's a delicate balance of insecurity that's being preyed upon, because I know for myself, major attachment trauma, major issues being, as you said, seen, recognized, validated. It may be one of the reasons why I went into acting in the first place, and I'm well aware of this, but there's something within me that needed desperately to be seen, desperately to be part of something and validated, because I didn't get that in the way I needed when I was in my most formative years. So this one gal in the class is like, oh, can you see me? And then Tage is like, yes, I see you, but be brief, as she said, you need to be short. It was very, she was like, oh yes, Tage is like, and we have this, and I'm being the cute little grandma, but you need to not say my, so there was this like very quick change that she would do. But if you got one of those, like, as you said, the criticism, the constructive criticism at best, oh my God, she gave you a download. And
that's
everybody
what you would call it, a download.
Yeah. And everybody would, go to the person, especially if it was a big download.
Meaning you got yelled at hard.
You got yelled at so hard.
Okay, I want to pause, pin here, because this is so YB the Predator formula all over it, and how they've created kind of a mystical attachment to getting yelled at, right? Getting yelled at and broken to pieces in a public forum, public forum, not privately. And so that's classic YB the Predator on repeat. And going back to the point of attachment and the mother, I couldn't agree with you more, and how it touches such a raw place, say in you personally, because you have a story to tell around that. But I would say most of us, if a teacher comes to you and says, that's mother issues, who wouldn't be like, yeah, because we all do. And so you feel seen, as if this teacher had some sort of intuitive hit and they're speaking to you. But what Jules pointed out was, no, this is a very collective issue. Most people might have mother issues or father issues or a combination of both, because it's called attachment trauma. And so to have teachers that act like that's fantastical wisdom and then pedestal themselves and then use tactics like what she's pointing out of softness, switch to penetrating, softness, switch to abusive. YB did that, and it created an ethos where that became normalized, and now it's on hyper predator mode with Tej. Keep going.
Okay, I was trying to. Okay, I'm going to play this clip. We are in the middle of a class. This is in 2014, leading up to solstice, but this is in June of 2014 here. So I'm just going to play this. It's probably going to sound a little fuzzy here, but I'll tell you what she's saying.
Specific posture. Take your left elbow up.
So
like
she's
this, and
she's
the right
instructing
one.
how to get into this
Oh, Wendy,
meditation.
I'm so sorry, but they're telling me I have to tell you this. You're supposed to take teacher training starting in October.
Okay. So she's saying, okay, put your arms out like this. Oh, Wendy, I'm sorry, but I have to do this. They're telling me that you need to take teacher's training starting in October. Did you catch that?
No, that's what she said in the middle of teaching a Kriya.
Yeah. In the middle of the Kriya.
Second posture. You take your left elbow up like this and the right one. Oh, Wendy, I'm so sorry, but they're telling me I have to tell you this. You're supposed to take teacher training starting in October.
They're telling me that you're supposed to take teacher training in October. So this is supposedly a message she's getting from divine people, a direct channel. So Teja set herself up for being a direct channel of etheric wisdom that she can channel directly to a student at any given time, even in the middle of a class.
Okay, but mind you, this is after another meditation that they've already done for 11 or 22 minutes. And then she has everybody rock back and forth on their spine, in a ball on the ground. And then she says, I never knew how much energy could be released through the spine. I remember in the 1970s, I was doing a sadhana at Guru Ram Das Ashram, and I did the rocking back and forth on the spine. And oh, I just realized how powerful this could be. Okay, now the meditation we're going to do now, it can only be done for 11 minutes. You can't go over 11 minutes. So, it's setting this all up, and everybody's already spaced out. We're already in a very, altered space, right? Everybody's just high. And so everybody's like, okay, nodding along with the blank eyes. And then she says, oh, and Wendy, you have to take teacher's training starting in October. They're telling me. I'm getting that right now. And she used to do this thing where it's like, it's coming down through my crown chakra and coming out through my third eye.
Oh, just like that, the L in the Satanama meditation that comes in through the top of your head and out the third eye point. Just so we know that the mythology goes back. It's not a new download by Tej.
So this is all setting up for. Now, I have been single for a few years and kind of frustrated and desperate on the, that front. And I'm doing seva at Nine Treasures, and I'm working at Golden Bridge. And I don't really have any romantic prospects, And at this point, I'm not thinking I can even date a guy who's outside of the Dharma or outside of the yoga world, because how would they understand? We don't have that bridge, so to speak, between understanding of the diet, the lifestyle, what I'm doing, why I'm getting up at 3:30 in the morning, taking a cold shower, and then doing this meditation every morning, why I'm chanting, why I'm playing this music in my car, why I'm playing this music 24/7 in my apartment, why I'm wearing this costume, why I'm eating this food, why I'm going on this special diet on this special day, why I believe that this day aligned with the moon, blah 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 blah. It's too difficult. I was trying to hang out with guys who were not in this, and they were like, okay, weirdo, But meanwhile, somebody in the community is like, yeah, so I'm seeking within the community for a personal relationship. Tej says, Jules, you and this woman, you guys are really good together. Now, maybe she was just noticing that we were friendly and that, we had a good rapport, because we did. And she was quite a bit older than me, nearly 20 years older than me. And she says, you two should continue this relationship. You two should get even closer. I approve of this relationship. She would say that to us, and she said it repeatedly. Then she says, you to me and this older lady, she says, you need to move into her apartment, and Jules, your studio apartment, you need to house this woman. Why? Because she was struggling financially, and she was doing 40 hours of seva a week, basically essentially like the backbone for Tej's business. Tej doesn't want to lose this person as a, sevadar, free labor. And the lady needs a place to stay so she can Airbnb her place to make money. So Tej says, they're telling me. She took us out to lunch one day, the three of us. It's just the three of us. And she says, and I'm sitting there, I'm like, I don't think this is a really good idea. I don't think that this is going to work out, for this reason and this reason, already I can see that we're having difficulties, in this regard, like me and this woman. And Tej says, no, you have to have her live with you. They're telling me, Guru Ram Das is telling me, he's telling me, meaning Yogi Bhajan, this is your destiny. Don't you blow your destiny by not doing this. She has to live with you. And that's how she would yell. Literally, I'm doing a reenacting of her. And you don't argue with that. You don't argue with Yogi Bhajan, Guru Ram Das, and your teacher telling you that this has to happen.
Wow.
And this woman wants to have a physical, romantic, sexual relationship with me.
But you're not yet in relationship.
We began right then to have a physical relationship together.
But at that point, that hadn't happened. And let me reiterate, Tej is telling you that this woman who was already volunteering 40 hours a week needed to move out of her house so she could Airbnb it and make money, because it was like a bigger home, and move into your place, which was a studio apartment. And you're being commanded that that's your destiny and to have a relationship with this woman.
She had started to say, you guys are good together. You should have she never said you guys need to have sex together. She wasn't explicit like that.
I understand.
But we were approved to be together is what I'm saying. This is important for a few reasons. First of all, Yogi Bhajan's teachings, it is so perverted and so whatever, just like bad, wrong for men to be having sex with each other. However, women are supposed to have sex with each other. There's no problem with that. He's having his secretaries sleep with each other for various.
Right, we know that in 2020, but at this time you're with Tej, that wasn't the case.
Was not the case. However, I went on the internet and, I'm trying to find, there was the Library of the Teaching. So I'm trying to find anything that says lesbian, right? What does Yogi Bhajan say about this? Like, is this okay? Because I am like, okay, I could be in a romantic relationship with this woman. This can work for me. Like, maybe this is my destiny. Maybe this is, there's plenty of people who are gay around here. And sure, like this is what I'm supposed to do. I mean, I always wanted to have a husband and have kids, but maybe we could adopt. I don't know, whatever. Maybe this is where I'm supposed to be. My teacher's saying this is how you're supposed to be living and what's supposed to be happening.
And you just got yelled out with that. And also that's its own trauma.
So, well, right. But she would do that, she would yell at me. And it was
that is a download. So you're supposed to feel happy about it as if you just got a healthy lesson and that was good love.
And that you're special enough that she can yell at you.
Special enough that she could yell at you. Does that not sound historical?
So, but what I'm trying to say is I think I was already in this paradigm of feeling guilty and ashamed that I can't follow Kesh to, an nth degree, that I'm not, enough in with the community that I can get one of these, better jobs with a dharmic business. And I'm trying to find my way. And now this is laid on me. So anyway, I go onto the internet because I'm resourceful. I'm a researcher, and I had already found that wacko world of Yogi Bhajan forum. And I had been told by Tej and Hardy G1 multiple times that these were the crazy people who had done way too much acid in the 60s or 70s. And that's why they left, because they couldn't handle the intensity of the yoga. They really were wacko. And the name didn't help to sell what the forums were saying. But I did find in one of the forum streams, one of the chat threads, somebody had said, well, all of us, all of the women, ladies camp and onwards, all the women, we were all sleeping with each other anyway. All the women were sleeping there, something to that effect. So I read that and I thought, oh, okay. So this was part of Yogi Bhajan's women's camp. This is part of the culture. This is something that happens within the community. However, I felt extremely ashamed and guilty because then I'm taking this woman who I am now in a romantic relationship with, we go to the Gurdwara, and all of a sudden I realize I cannot introduce her as my girlfriend because Sikhs don't recognize same-sex marriage. It's not like we could get married in the Gurdwara, heaven forbid, because
And you don't at this point, you don't know the long history of like lesbians being
I don't
kicked
know anything.
out or being broken apart in by YB, and how heteronormative 3HO is and stuff like that
Well, I'm recognizing how heteronormative 3HO is. That's what I'm saying. I'm
at that
recognizing
time. Right.
that I cannot be
Right.
openly gay here and still be part of this sort of like core of the Dharma. That's not something that would be possible. However,
But
there
your
were
spawn cult with Tej, obviously she's condoning it, so that had a different air and energy about it.
but she wasn't open. So Tej also struggled with the gay aspect, and whether that's something within her or culturally or just what. But I mean, she used to say things in class like, well, my daughter says, because her daughter is just a couple of years younger than me, that a girl will have a relationship with a boy and then with a girl and then flip flop back to a relationship with a boy. That's what these young people are doing these days. Like, I don't get it. I don't understand why a woman would want to have a relationship with a woman. But meanwhile, I'm sorry, but Tej is sort of, and how she's teaching even, which is the Yogi Bhajan way, is a very good example of how these ladies camp trainings, teachings, the whole system, it's turning women into this sort of ultimate masculine warrior type, and the men are softened and almost turned into women.
Ding, ding, ding.
So
mic drop.
And so I'm sitting there and getting this Tej energy, this, she's teaching these ladies camp kriyas all the time, or the lady camp sets. And so it was really speaking to this very young sort of aspect of myself. So I'm identifying with that and this moving through the world as a warrior. And this is, I'm da da da. And that's very, I mean, it's very sort of masculine. And I'm like, okay, victory, I can do this. I'm strong. I'm a strong, and I thought, okay, well, this kind of ties into this whole idea of maybe finding a partner who's a bit more yin. And what I'm saying is it was all sort of in between the lines. And the more I got involved with white tantric yoga, oddly enough, the more it all seemed to make sense. This, okay, women can sleep with women kind of thing, and this is natural, and this is part of tantrically, maybe this is part of moving energy and whatever. Somehow it all just seemed to fit in. So relationship with that woman did not work out. I mean, maybe we had a physical relationship for 6-12 weeks at best.
But she did move into your apartment?
She did move into my apartment, and she stayed there for a year. During this year, we did a whole lot of seva for Tej together. And and that involved, I had already started helping Tej to do what was known as the facilitator seva for white tantric yoga. So that means spending days and weeks planning for the facilitator and making the facilitator comfortable so that on the day, the facilitator can be the most pampered and the most taken care of. And we're serving food on Yogi Bhajan's, very sacred china. And we have these artifacts from Yogi Bhajan, the picture of Guru Ram Das that he had, the vase that he had, and putting flowers in that. Whatever these things, and that this is the tantric equipment for white tantric yoga LA. And and the facilitator, we bow at the facilitator's feet, maybe not literally, but energetically. You are catering, you're running around, you're getting up at 2 a.m. to get ready to start this day for the facilitator. So I'm starting to get funneled into this seva. And I do have to say that when I was doing all this meditation and all this yoga, my intuition was very sharp, whether you want to call that being psychic or what. But I mean, I was meditating a lot. And I do think that anybody who kind of meditates on that level and really like hones and pays attention, could maybe be what you maybe want to call psychic. I look at it as the information is already there. It's just a matter of being able to have enough of almost like a space to be able to like see it and put the pieces together. A very sort of simple example is like there was a woman who, and then I'm meditating a lot at this time, and she kind of came up to me and started talking to me about this breakup that she'd recently gone through. And all of a sudden I was like, oh, she's been eating a lot of ice cream. And it seems to come out of nowhere, right? However, the subtle things, there was kind of a different smell on her breath. There was sort of a different, I could tell that, just by the tone of her voice, that there was a little bit of kind of inflammation in her sinuses. She maybe had I could tell that there was sugar in her system because the way she smelled. And these are like really subtle things. So it's not that I'm necessarily like psychic, like you ate a tub of Ben and Jerry's last night, which she had, because I asked her and she's like, yeah. But you could tell. So, and then
was this question on this, because it could be totally in left field, but like information like that, that's I could say intuition of your own. Like we all could be perceptive in different ways or pick up information about other people in different ways. But what I find interesting about the way that I discovered Kundalini yoga taught me how to do that with other people and call it kind of my own intuitive hit was, on one level, it was a form of kind of like, and again, I'm not saying this is resonant for you, but I'm curious. What did it matter if she ate a tub of ice cream? I mean, it did go against lifestyle. So it's a form of you knowing information about her. And I'm not saying this is what you were doing, but it's one of the ways I found my intuition twisted up in relation to what I had been trained in Kundalini yoga is I used my perceptive intuitive hits as a way to judge others because I wasn't actually feeling me. And so it was actually a deflection mechanism that allowed me to use my perceptiveness and awareness as a form of judgment and shame to others as a way to bolster my own because I wasn't feeling myself.
Oh, I'm just letting that land. Yeah. We were taught to judge. The whole system is all about judgment. And that's what I'm saying, because in that judgment, somebody is not good enough. Somebody's wrong. Somebody's an outsider. You're drawing that line. I'm just saying that woman had ice cream. It is neither good nor bad. And if there was a judgment that came out in me, then that's my own. And maybe that was because I was in that mind space.
Yeah. And you're practicing what the teachers are wielding. So it's not just in you, even though that's what we're taught to think it is as a teacher, but rather we're emulating and modeling teachers that are doing that as deflection of their own feelings and then using their perception to command and tell other people what to do. It's such a fascinating thing because I think it perpetuates unconsciously. We don't even know we're doing it and we carry it on as the new generation of teachers. And it's an important one for all of us to hear because this stuff is built into the teachings. And and this is classic Cult 101. If you read some of the books, like Terror, Love, and Brainwashing, you get to hear how this is classic maneuvering that creates a double bind in the consciousness. And so it's bound in bounded choice, and you're disorganized and you're emulating things you don't even know. And then you actually become the inner tyrant where you're gaslighting yourself because then the teacher doesn't actually have to do it because that teacher voice is in your head and you think it's your intuition and it's actually an inner tyranny that got implanted as a way to as a way to control, right? Like powerful what you're sharing. Keep going.
And I hope that listeners will replay everything that Guru Nishan just said, because that's pretty dense and incredibly important. But it illustrates exactly where I was at that time. And so I have this compounded shame of now thinking I'm gay, believing that this is my destiny, and not being able to be recognized in that from the Sikh or Gurdwara arm of things, the dharmic branch of things. So feeling this incredible inner conflict. And that, what do you do with that? Well, you just meditate more, you do more yoga, you do more seva, and you bow to the guru more and more and more and more. And, you know, the answers will come. You're in your highest destiny. So, but then I'm feeling like there must be something wrong with me because this isn't recognized somehow. Why am I different? A lot of shame. I'm feeling a lot of shame. And I know that this is just part of, you know, 2020 kind of broke things open. The last few years have broken things open. Once gay marriage was recognized federally, you know, that kind of broke things open. But this is prior to all of that.
Wow.
In our, yeah. So
I'm blown away by the convolution and the inner bind.
But what I'm saying is I'm tapping into sort of all this kind of ultimate shame at this point, and I'm really tied in. I'm really tied in. So I don't remember.
Pause. You're also tapping in, whether at what year is this again? 2016?
14.
2014. So I want to just say that on some sort of an energetic, etheric level, you're tapping into a community ethos
Yes.
that YB had created around himself of sadistic, horrible, manipulative, coerced lesbianism.
Yes.
In a culture that he actively kicked people out and abused people for the choice of being gay. And this is her lived experience in 2014 on a secret history. And so everyone listening who never has told their story and just quietly left away in your lesbian or gay relationship, or got abused and never got to tell your story until 2020, including my uncle, including Mitty Pitty, including whoever else. She's going through this in 2014 in this convoluted state, having no idea this is the history of the ethos of the community.
Not a clue.
Called the 3HO Khalsa, the pure ones, the righteous ones. Go ahead.
But I think it illustrates exactly that this is the ethos. It's in between the lines. It's there. It doesn't matter. It's still there.
It's like the mantra playing in the room. It's the energetic frequency that's happening. It's the exact reason why we were told to play mantra. It's that same frequency happening, but you don't necessarily know what it is because the history hasn't been talked about, and it's a community committed to silence more than anything, and secrecy out of protection for each other. But remember, when you break open and you tell your story, you're freeing somebody else. Keep going.
So yes, to everybody who felt the same feelings and who felt ostracized or, you know, really just frustrated. Why can't we get married in the Gurdwara? Whatever, you know.
To all of you who got kicked out in the 70s and 80s and 90s and 2000s and then 2010s and then into 2020, that were lesbian or gay and not publicly recognized, not honored, and actually abused and slandered. To all the relationships that got broken up because you were lesbian, and instead Yogi Bhajan married you off to other people and forced you into his own concubineship because he said lesbianism wasn't right. Like, the hypocrisy is sick.
But as we know, he was having his secretaries, he was making them sleep with each other.
Meanwhile, and then chewing on their labia at that.
And having them have sex in front, you know, group sex or in sex, you know, sex.
Harem sex, group sex.
With each other.
That we were so indoctrinated out of.
Right. And so, but again, I mean, this is just this ultimate power and control play of, you know, secrecy and shame and okay, so here's the thing. You don't have sex outside of marriage. You know, this is the other thing. Like, I would have had to have been engaged to a guy to even like really start, you know, being able to make out with them within the community. which is like, so there was that too, and like I said, I was still kind of looking at this point,
So confusing.
so confusing. Anyway, so during all of this, I literally, there were mornings when I got up at 1:45 to start the seva for some morning sadhana that Tej would be having, because I was in charge of bringing the cake for Guru Ram Das's birthday, or I was in charge of making sure that we had a printout of the hukam from the Golden Temple for that day so that it could be read, at the end of the satnams, whatnot, right? And so, but I'm doing all this seva and not sleeping and just completely immersed in this reality. And so I think it was like maybe it was a Guru Ram Das birthday. I don't remember the exact timeline, but in my life I kind of tend to have like a 3 strikes you're out. I always just sort of have like the first time it's like, okay, making note of this, but maybe we aren't a vibe for whatever set of reasons. Second time, it's like, oh snap! Now you're repeating yourself. You got one more chance, and then third time, it's like, okay, this is a pattern. This is never going to change. I don't need to have any business with this individual. That's kind of just how I've always. It's just been a policy. Sometimes people are out on the first strike, but this is my teacher. This is my life. I mean, this is my entire paradigm within which I'm living, the way I'm seeing the world at this point. And it was one of these events where I was supposed to be bringing the prashad or the napkins or something, I was in charge of making the tea, because I'd make like a huge, 3 or 4 gallons of tea for the 150 people that were showing up to whatever class she had. So I'm doing all this work for free, and I did something wrong. I don't remember what it was. I forgot to bring the right kind of knife, or I forgot to bring the right kind of napkin or something. So there's, 150, 200 people there at this class, at this workshop, at this event. And it's, Jules, how could you forget to bring that? You're so stupid. You're so stupid. You're such an idiot. How could you be so dumb to forget something like that? And in the public forum, and that was just, because I was trying so hard to be so perfect with my perfect turban and my perfect outfit. And I'm living with so much of this shame about the fact that I had plucked my eyebrows or shaved my legs or had to trim my hair for this job. And the fact that I, had had sex with a woman, and what am I even doing? And I'm struggling, I'm broke, I don't have it, whatever, like all of this. And it just, that hits hard from the person that you're conflating with, God. Your channel into, connecting with oneness. But in my case, also attachment trauma with my own mother. So, this is a wound that I have that, goes back to maybe even in utero. So I'm devastated. However, the other students, I bring it up to somebody like, yeah, she yelled at me. I don't know. I'm crying. I'm so upset. Like, I don't know. This doesn't feel right. I'm saying, I don't know. This doesn't feel right, and saying I have an issue with this. But then everybody else around me saying, oh my God, you're so lucky. She gave you such a big download, to tell you you're so stupid. That's amazing.
Lord. Oh my Lord.
But me feeling like, the paperclip is being bent really hard right now in the wrong direction. And so I'm like, okay, but I come back. The cat's coming back the very next day. And then, we're going along, and then there's another incident. I think this one, there was a climate control system in her studio. Well, it was this studio that she was renting. It was actually like a karate dojo that she was renting on the Sunset Strip at Sunset and Laurel, which is a very sort of central location in West Hollywood. And which was part of the reason why she was able to get such a big draw of, more celebrities were always coming. And, so-and-so would show up at the class, like, all these sort of washed up singers from the 80s were always appearing. Sometimes they were producers, sometimes they were actors. And anyway, sometimes they were rock stars, it was an interesting, and if you got to do like front desk check-in, you'd be like, oh my God, did you see she came in? So anyway, I keep going. This is my sort of lifeline into the yoga, and I want to get the downloads, and I want to do the powerful meditation, and I want to be with the big group energy. And this is close to where I live enough. I don't have to go all the way to the west side where they were doing their teacher training things, Hari one and her anyway, or the RaMa world at this point. So there was a climate control system, and it was like, it was muggy, it was swampy. Something wasn't, the thing was off. It wasn't at the right level. Tej had not arrived yet to the class, and we were like setting things up. So I touch the thing and I say, okay, let's put it on 72 degrees or 68 degrees or something like that. Let's get the place cooled down. And it was a finicky thing. It had probably been there since the late 70s or the early 80s. The whole system was very outdated. And I think there was something where you had to like turn a wheel and hit a button and switch a lever for it to go on, or there was a very specific way you had to do it. I didn't know that necessarily. I was just trying to get it on the right temperature. Anyway, it wasn't the right temperature for Tej when she came in, whether it was still too hot or at this point it was too cold. And it was, Jules, how could you be such an idiot? You're so stupid. You're so dumb. And whatever other, and she would curse too, like, you're such a fucking idiot. Whatever the thing was that she put on me, but it was, oh, and you're an egomaniac. You're an egomaniac to think that you alone could turn the air conditioning on. How dare you? Like, you making this decision, you're an egomaniac. And, that's like kind of a big blow because, we're doing years of meditation to kind of
eradicate the ego. Hello, daily ego eradicator. It's like the ultimate insult to say you're an ego maniac, right? In a world that everybody's acting so like they're so humble, even though they're all living egomaniacs.
Let alone the hundreds, if not thousands of hours of me cooking gallons of food for all these people and making a special gluten-free vegan prashad or making.
Well, I mean, you're going into the details of all the service you've given, it's like what really is happening as a power play of building people up and then tearing them down and building them up and tearing them down. And when this is done in a public forum, the shame sets in, the guilt, right? Everything that you've touched on. But once again, folks, listen to how Tej is delivering it. It's very much YB Predator formula on repeat. Anybody who, grew up in the 80s, 90s and experienced him directly knows that this is just a normal staple of public life around YB. And it was purposeful. And people did goo goo gaga around those people and said how blessed you are that YB yelled at you like that, and you're like, but that became a normal ethos. Shame became a normal part of living.
And I mentioned it last time, this revolving door of the
Yes.
Davidars, the people who were like her right-hand person. And so over time, I'm recognizing that what happens is the pattern is they get really close to her. She does this like, push back, yelling thing with them. And then they can't take it anymore and they leave. And that was the pattern. And I started to recognize that. And after this sort of second strike, as it were, I remember I came down to my parents. We have a guest house here. And okay, prior to that though, so on the morning that this happened, I was devastated. And I left the studio and I went back to my apartment, and I at this time I had my mattress on the floor so that it could be facing east and west. So I could be sleeping with the sunrise, not north, south with the, against the electromagnetic, because that's what you do. So I laid down on my mattress on the floor and I couldn't move for hours. And then I started vomiting. Just vomiting. And then I also had, out the other end as well, I was having really bad diarrhea. And it was like energetically, I was so sick. My enteric nervous system was so disrupted. And this went on for probably about a day. And then I was so distraught. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't work. I couldn't, go back to her class. I just didn't know what to do. So I came down here for 5 days, kind of reset myself, did a bunch of meditations out of a bunch of old yoga books, and came back and was like, okay, I'm ready to get on board on the Tage train again. And that went on for a few more months. And then the final straw was when this woman who was living with me, one morning, I was running a little bit late to the class. And I think it was like a full moon eclipse meditation or something. But she saved a seat for me next to her near the front of the class, put my yoga mat and my sheepskin and my meditation pillow down next to her. And she had gone to Starbucks to get an iced tea, that hibiscus iced tea that they have. They call it passion, but it's pink. It's a red color. And so she got one of those from Starbucks and put it at the front of my mat for me. I'm a little bit late. The class has kind of already started. I sort of slip in and sit down. And then I'm like, oh, thank you. This is amazing. This drink. Yes, this is just what I need. It's a hot day. I'm thirsty. So I have a little bit of the drink. Tage is, in the middle of talking or instructing or whatever, and then, I just take a sip and all of a sudden it's, how could you be so dumb to have a red drink? What is this red drink you have in the front of my class? And I'm like, so I set it back down on the corner of my mat. Like, okay, I won't be drinking a red drink in your class, I guess. But, and then she goes, don't put it there. Are you stupid? Don't put it on your mat. And I'm like, okay. So then I put it at the corner of her stage. She has this little platform that she's sitting on that we would set up, and it had like wooden legs. And I thought, okay, if it's kind of sequestered under and behind the corner of the, nobody could kick it. It's kind of sheltered by the leg of the stage. And she goes, don't put it there. Like, are you an idiot? You're an egomaniac. How could you, what are you doing making these decisions? And then she says to another student, can you deal with this drink? Because Jules obviously doesn't know how to. And this is in front of this class of 200 people that's there. And that was it for me. I was like, no, I'm not gonna withstand this amount of abuse anymore. This is abusive. This is stupid and abusive. And what the hell am I doing? And that was it. And I never went back after that. I cried and I actually left maybe
To her
half
class.
class.
To her class.
I think I tried to come back once or twice after that, but it just wasn't. It was done. It was broken. The paperclip bent, snapped off.
Yeah, I mean, I'm terrified in your reenactment of it. I can only imagine in a public space, her on the teacher stage, on the sheepskin, looking all royal and regal, and in teacher mode, and that happened. It's like it pains me to feel it.
And in the teacher trainings, she would do that too. She would single somebody out. There'd be 200 people there at their teacher training workshop, her and her G1. And, she'd say, I'm just going to use the name Sarah because there were a lot of Sarahs there. But, she'd say, Sarah, all you care about is whatever color glasses you're wearing today or this week. You need to wear more white. You never want to wear white. Why don't you ever want to wear white? You're never going to get anywhere as a yoga student. You might as well just leave this community, things like that. But in front of everybody, and this is an artist, this is Hollywood. So this is some artist who works in the entertainment industry who, has some really cool glasses that maybe have like cool frames, and they like to rotate out their glasses as part of their style and their look, and they work in art departments, and that's just who they are.
and all the reasons in between. And I want to point out that the culture of the Saturn teacher that is perpetuated in the teachings as a way to justify this level of abusive and coercive and manipulative yelling that YB routinely did in every lecture, in every ladies camp, in every teacher training. And then his teachers repeated a lot of these methodologies and styles in the name of Saturn teaching. So it's so potent for you to share this to me, because again, we're talking 2014, 15, 16, we're talking about, think about how that repetitive, that formula is on full display in a completely different setting, but not.
So for anybody who has experienced this Saturn teacher stuff, again, you're not alone. we all did. I think everybody had the same shared experience of it.
And in unique ways, in ways that are distorted. So they aren't always the exact same way, but they're similar distortions that create a similar effect. And different teachers, because they were unique students of YB, took on these personality traits of his and passed it on into their unique teaching style. So it's important to know that, again, it can show up in Europe a little bit differently than it shows up in Mexico, than it shows up in South Africa or in other United States spaces, or even in, China or any of it. But just know that the lineages are what I like to call the spawn cults, the teachers that then create a whole new demographic of following. They're taking these same initial formulas of their abuse and passing it on as if it's a beautiful part of the teachings, when really the whole teacher training system calls it the Saturn teacher. Keep going.
I'm shaking my head. I mean, I'm shaking my head because it's like, yeah. And then, so at this point, there's nothing more devastating than to be cut off from your teacher. So I'm now kind of in this lost and devastated mode, but I had my Gurdwara community, and I still had the Hari Jiwan RaMa community on the west side, and I still had my Golden Bridge community. Golden Bridge closed, I want to say maybe it was the end of 2015, Golden Bridge Hollywood. Financially, they couldn't make it without the population of students that Tejan Hari Jiwan had brought in. Wow. And Gurmukh and Guru Shabad were not there to build anymore because they were traveling all the time. And they still had a Golden Bridge on the west side, Golden Bridge, Santa Monica. And I was peripherally involved there. I was teaching there maybe a few times a week. So, but that was a much smaller operation that was being run by their daughter, Wa, who I don't think she really wanted to be running a yoga studio. I think she had other things she wanted to be involved with, but it was kind of given to her. Her parents were like, here, you can do this. Anyway, that business went under. Her and her husband were trying to run it. But again, they just didn't have the draw, the population, because everybody was going to the RaMa and then the Hari Jiwan teacher training thing.
And I want everyone to know that it's also because there's a goo gaga system going on around legacy teachers. So I remember really tuning into this around 2014, 15, 16. And, there ended up being kind of a mythology built around anybody who was a senior, or what they called legacy teachers. So that was the teachers that were the direct influence to YB. Of course, everybody claimed that and then had their unique stories of when YB told them this. But I want you to know that there was an actual purposeful marketing message that KRI chose to create a mythology around the legacy teachers in this way. So people really quite did have fantastical followings because people wanted to be with certain special teachers.
Yes. Thank you for clarifying. I mean, that's what was going on. Yeah, absolutely. But so I felt like I could still go to the Hari Jiwan classes and workshops, and I was, but they were starting to get a little weird. And I was friends with a lot of second gen people who were still part of the 3HO world at that point. And they were saying, his classes are weird. What he's doing is strange. Their culture is weird. And I wasn't fully resonating with it. And there was a dissonance. I would sit in the classes and I'd be like, I wouldn't say that if I was teaching, because at the time I was teaching, and I wouldn't be doing this. And I don't, like, this guy's out on his own trip, basically. And I didn't realize it at the time, but yeah, he was kind of developing his own. He was finding avenues to make it his own, and so they could branch off and do their own thing, break off,
and not pay a cut to KRI. I mean, let's frankly look at it from a business perspective, right? He's having long time foreshadowings of the plan to break out, because he had already been creating the loyalty and direct loyalty to him. He's already started to marry off people and kind of create the following to him. Anyway, keep going.
Yeah, and excuse me, and also he had like a cash model. Like, he was actually encouraging students to come and pay in cash.
Go figure.
Go figure. So, and encouraging students to come to the teachers trainings who were not signed up as teacher trainees, because then there's more people there and it's more of a buzz and it's more of a thing. And, somebody is going to bring their crystals to sell, or somebody's going to bring extra prashad to serve. The more people, the more community, the merrier. And I don't necessarily disagree with that, but it was everybody come, pay what you can in cash, and we're making money off of this thing that we're already running, but we're not giving any cut of any of these other little side, incomes to KRI, because they're not registered as students with this teacher training at this,
Wow.
yeah. So it was,
What a racket.
yeah, it was just a business thing. So I'm like starting to resonate less and less and less with the Hari Jiwan thing, but I'm still at this point very heavily involved with white tantric yoga. So what that looked like for me was doing the marketing and the registration and a little bit of admin kind of stuff with White Tantric Yoga LA, and there were 2 of those a year. And then also being a manager, whether the lead manager, the assistant manager at the solstices, so winter and summer solstice for the SSS cabin.
Ooh.
The reason I bring this up is because this is like on a whole nother level of quote unquote seva. I don't know about other aspects of work exchange at the solstices, but the SSS cabin was very demanding.
Tell us about it, because those of us that left young, we have no idea that the SSS cabin would continue after he's dead. Like, who was there?
So this was the tantric facilitators. These were the secretaries. And there was still a culture around it of they're the ultimate. These are the representation of Yogi Bhajan, of the Mahan Tantric at this point. These are who is channeling the Mahan Tantric. Therefore, you need to set the stage, literally, set up the house, clean the house, prepare for the Mahan Tantric. And what that looked like was seva from 6 a.m. to midnight every single day.
Oh my God.
But this is the ultimate seva because you're serving the Mahan Tantric. And not only that, you're therefore holding space indirectly for the however many thousand or thousands of people are doing the White Tantric Yoga on those 3 days of White Tantric Yoga.
Y'all hear this? Holding space, the ultimate seva, because you're holding space for the people who are channeling in the Mahan Tantric and the subtle energy of YB the Predator.
And I didn't know at the time that these were women who had been, had
been sexually abused by him.
Thank you.
Of course you didn't. How would you know? But meanwhile, I want everyone to hear the ethos and the mythology built up around them, the ones holding the space, right? Keep going. Keep giving it to us.
So when I was being trained for this tantric seva, I remember that Tej told me, so the tantric facilitators were traditionally, they all had to be women. It all has to be women. There's never a man. And these were women who were secretaries of Yogi Bhajan. And these were women who were not to be married. None of them were ever married.
Interesting.
I didn't really know what that meant at the time, but I was like, okay. But to me, it was kind of like, oh, these are nuns. These are women who've taken, a vow of chastity and poverty and service to, serve the Mahan Tantric. What could be more beautiful?
Wow.
And also it was, these, I could tell, because these women would have stories about their time with Yogi Bhajan, and oh my gosh, tell me, give me the download, give me the juice, I want to hear all about how Yogi Bhajan was and what that was like. And so it was a very special thing to be able to sit and talk with, to drive to and from the airport, these women, to be able to serve them.
They're the embodiment of YB as far as what you've been trained to believe. And I want you to keep in mind there, I don't know how the tantric facilitators came about, but, they began, Simran ran it, right? And then there was also Narayan, and then that's the older Narayan, right? And then there was also Surya, right? And then there was also other people, but some of the ones I knew that also weren't married, say, were Sampurankar, maybe Mahan Kiran. And then some of the ones that were married, that two that I could think of would be Makar, and there's one other married person that would
I
come to
don't
mind
remember
soon.
everybody. There
But
was
my point is the fact that Jules is bringing this up, and there's a mythology and an ethos around these women not being married, and maybe one or two that got to come in because for whatever reasons that someone brings them on too. And it's just such an interesting thing to listen to you talk about the SSC cabin and the privilege of being able to pick up the tantric facilitator, take care of them as if this person was the embodiment of YB for the day. And that's really how the white tantrics went on. Like these women, another one, Siri Simran. So Siri Simran Kaur also was married, but YB had married her. And then maybe at the time she was already divorced. But the point is each of these women would go up there and tell very personal stories about their relationship with YB. Obviously, not that they were in a sex harem, but other things that really created an angelic feeling around these beautiful women wearing the chunis. And remember the story of how Jules wants to wear a turban and a chuni. So it's like all these layers of the mythology of why this is the ultimate personification of excellent devotion to the teachings.
And when I came in and spent a month in Espanola in 2012, mind you, right? Like within, just after a year into being involved with the whole thing, there was a first gen in Espanola who said to me, "Gosh, you look so much like Premka."
Whoa, isn't that?
And I've had a lot of people say that to me. Like there's a similarity. I don't know that we necessarily look alike, but I could see how maybe there's a resemblance. But then she said, Yogi Bhajan would have told you to quit your acting career. And I'm listening. And she says, Yogi Bhajan would have made you one of his secretaries.
Who said this to you?
It was a first generation lady who had kind of left the community, but was still peripherally involved just because she had family at that point who was still involved. And this was in New Mexico.
Interesting.
And, I kind of took note of that, but I also was like, I could have been a secretary. I could have been serving Yogi Bhajan. That this was something that you aspire to. Oh my God, me. And then when
the chosen one?
Yeah. And then when I was doing this tantric seva, that's how I felt.
Yeah.
That's truly how I felt. I felt, this is the closest thing I could be to have been one of Yogi Bhajan's secretaries.
Yeah.
And I had a vision or, kind of like a visceral experience. I was meditating at the side of the tantric stage during a kriya one time, holding space for the facilitator who was holding space for, supposedly the whole tantric meditation. And I didn't know that this was a thing he did. I just didn't know. I hadn't watched all the videos and I wasn't part of it or anything, but I felt Yogi Bhajan come behind me and put his hand on my shoulder. And he said to me, "You're doing such a great job."
Oh my.
And so then I actually told one of the tantric facilitators that later, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, that's weird because he used to do that." And so I was like, "Oh my God, what are the synchronicity?" Like, wow, like, okay, I'm doing such a great job. Like, I'm doing so great, And there was constantly that pull through, like, you're doing so great. You're doing everything you're supposed to be doing. But meanwhile, something just still always felt off. And that's when, and like I said, in 2016, I was managing the SSS cabin. Mind you, one thing that kept happening is we were losing Sevadars. It was always really difficult to get people to want to do the SSS Seva. I mean, I wonder why. What, you don't want to like serve and dote on these older ladies hand and foot, like why wouldn't you want to do that, but anyway, so I had a panic attack on the second day, so the middle day of the tantric, the 3 days of tantric, and it was I thought at the time it was because the pressure, the what I was doing was just too much. I wasn't sleeping. I was getting a couple hours of sleep at best. We're camping in Florida, the bugs, the elements, everything. You're not sleeping. And I'm working from 6 a.m. to midnight and everything has to be perfect. And, there's all this pressure on and yeah, I just snapped. I just broke down. I remember going into the admin trailers, whatever, and saying to the people at the time who were kind of there, at the desk, because there was always somebody there to greet you, if you had an issue with, so these are 3HO staff mostly, the event staff, admin, they called it. And I remember going in and being like, listen, I'm not getting paid to do this. I'm having a recognition that I'm working all these hours and busting myself and working so hard for this, for everybody's experience, I'm not getting paid. You're getting paid because you work for 3HO. I'm not getting paid. In fact, I had to pay to be here. Yes, it was the lower exchange rate because I'm a manager, but what the heck? This doesn't seem right. I had a breakdown moment. I probably wasn't as animated as that because, within the system, emotion is commotion. So you have to be so neutral. Mm-hmm. But inside I was really having a tough time. And then, exactly as I sort of figured everything out moving into 2017 and then 2018, I was unable to do this anymore. But a little bit more about the white tantric, Sat Simran was obviously very involved with Yogi Bhajan and in a personal way as well, an intimate sexual way as well. And so the original tantric facilitators were other secretaries, other women who were having sex with Yogi Bhajan.
But at that time, you don't know that about Sat Simran. Like you haven't heard that from her directly, right? You're just saying you heard this through the grapevine, or you've heard it since 2020. Like, what do you?
I heard. Well, I figured it out in 2018, but I will say that
because of the person who had come up to you.
Yes.
And the conversations you had with other secretaries.
Yes, exactly. I pieced it together. But I remember, probably in 2016 having conversations with Sat Simran and her saying, like, because we were talking about dating. And, at the time I was still trying to date women because I thought that that's what I thought I was gay. I thought, this is my destiny. I'm a lesbian. Wow. And it wasn't really working out. And now I know why, because I don't think, it's not that I can't date women, but I think that I personally, me and my path, I'm more attracted to men. And that's what I'm into. But, I was still kind of trying to figure that out. And anyway, and having all that guilt and shame around it. But so I'm telling her, like, I've been dating women, I'm opening up to her. And so she kind of opens up to me. And I remember her saying, like, yeah, I want to date. And then I said to her, you haven't been able to date since Yogi Bhajan. She stopped, she was like, and I noticed that there was kind of a jump, like a pause with her, like, what do you know? But at the time I didn't really get it, but I was like, yeah, you gave your whole life to Yogi Bhajan. That must be so hard. You were just a secretary. And so you really never were out there in the pool. That's kind of like what I was thinking. But she paused, and I took note of that. I was like, huh, that was a funny reaction to have, and then we just sort of went on from there. It was just sort of swept aside and not acknowledged. But she actually hired me on to work for Health&Humanology, which is the organization that owns White Tantric Yoga. I do have to hand it to her it must have been the 80s, the 90s, she at some point was like, I'm sick of this. I'm sick of what I'm doing. I'm getting older, here I am in this harem. He's not even having sex with me anymore, whatever, whatever she did to get the tantric to, here's my idea. Almost like a blackmail sense. Who knows what the actual blackmail was, how she did it, how she worded it, whatever. But it was like, you give me the tantric. This is going to be my business. I need something. If I'm no longer going to be your secretary, you're no longer having sex with me. I'm no longer, give me something. Otherwise I'm going to tell whatever she did. I don't know how she did it, but she did it. And like, good for her, So
what you're saying is this is just kind of your conjecture But
Yes.
you know that that entity became hers at some point, that he allowed it to be her jurisdiction, her domain, her business. That's what you're
Yeah,
talking.
that's
So
what
you don't know
happened.
how that happened, but somehow she negotiated that with him.
Yes. And like good for her, like that was her way to like make a life for herself and have an income, have a business, after however many years of serving him. And so then from there, she just had control and domain over this enterprise, and it rakes in hundreds of thousands of dollars every year. The margins maybe aren't that great because I was in it. I saw how much money got made off each attendee versus what the cost to rent the space, get the food, get the facility, all the everything, the sound team and all that. So, the margins weren't huge, but each event does bring in, a good amount of money. And then, she
Well,
she
and
had a
one of
nice
the largest expenses of it, as far as I know, because I remember being a part of a local ashram that was hosting a white tantric, I learned that the cost of the facilitator and their salary is actually one of the highest expenses of a local area having a local white tantric.
I don't know about that. We didn't pay for the facilitator. Their airfare would be paid for through Health and Humanology. So, like that is an expense that goes back in. Do you see what I'm saying? But there's no actual salary for the facilitator, as far as I know. They just get, their airfare is covered, and obviously their housing and food and everything is covered. So they're doing a seva still themselves, but it is covered by Health and Humanology.
Yeah, my understanding of that was that it was seva. It might have been seva at solstices, but that wasn't necessarily the case for the local organization, the local ashrams that wanted to host them. It was a very high expense for a lot of places to do it that wouldn't often make any money. I don't know how it ran in LA, and I'm curious if that was local run or if there were guidelines that white tantric yoga
Yeah,
gave
so
to
there
those
were
local areas.
forms. There was like forms that we had to fill out, and on the form, it was, there were different categories. So, if you're a senior, that pays this amount to do the tantric. If you're just a regular attendee, if you're a student, if you're doing, we also had a half day thing that we did in LA that we allowed for people. But okay, so say, the price that we have to pay to Health and Humanology is $108 per attendee.
Got it. So
So
you're saying,
$108.
got it. So per person, 108 went to Health and Humanology, and
Yes.
then the remainder went to the local.
Well, to what? So if our price was $180 per person, so 180 minus 108, okay, so that's what, $72. So that's $72. Out of that, we have to pay, however many, $20,000 to rent the facility, this huge hall. We have to pay for the food. We have to pay for the rentals, the table rentals, the sound, whoever's running the sound booth, and then his equipment. So that's a couple $1,000s, whatever. So, but that gets divvied up, across. So maybe per head to actually put on this event, it's like, $65 per person. So then 72 minus 65, okay, you've got $7 left.
Wow.
And like in that like fudge sort of wiggle room, maybe, we took some of that and put it back into the local Gurdwara ashram. But then, that was supposed to go back to Health and Humanology, any excess. But, we often would just kind of keep it as a mini fundraiser because it wasn't huge. But so, so, and then people are always complaining about how high the price was. Well, that's because per head, per person, all that money's going back to Health and Humanology.
108 per person. Okay. So that's where I was getting at, that a
Prices were
large
going
majority,
up. Yeah.
108, like if the cost was 160, right, or whatever it was, 108 of every head was heading back to the Health and Humanology group. Got it.
Yeah. So anyway, I said Simran and I kind of became a little bit closer. And again, I have a lot of respect for her. I have to say, given the system of control and as we understand it now and what she was in, and if she listens to this, like, hi, Sat Simran.
I hope she does.
Got some respect for you.
We love you.
I just want you to know
your
that.
Story.
Yeah, I know you haven't shared your story, but we see you.
we
recognize
see you.
you.
We want to know.
Yeah. But and thank you, for providing this space for us to meditate. However, I do think it was, it was perpetuating everything else. So we do have to also recognize that it was kind of the hood ornament or the cornerstone of solstices. And then, also just the teacher training. You can't graduate the teacher training without having done, documentedly done a white tantric yoga.
Yeah.
And
So pause. This is key to know, because in order for anybody to fulfill and get their teacher certificate, they have to go to white tantric yoga. So it's a built-in part of the system that's like a cash cow, because any student that's becoming a teacher automatically has to go to get their level 1. And then once you're in the system, you're told you need to be going to tantra because it's a part of the elevation of your soul, for Christ's sake. I mean, for Guru's sake.
but also it's this sort of like centerpiece at the solstices. So there's this relationship between, you don't want to piss off Satsimran, because then, she's going to say, well, we're not going to have white tantric yoga at the 3HO event. Right.
Ah, right. It's like a built-in mechanism of, and I believe she would, because I know she would go to the European Yoga Festival, and that's where I got to experience white tantric again for the first time, was 3 years there. And it was also touted the only places you get 3 days in a row is at the solstices or the European Yoga Festival. Otherwise, you're only getting half day or day events in these different local areas. So it created this extra level of commitment once again to attend the bigger thing, to be more a part of it. And white tantra gets built into your everyday existence, just like going to solstice.
Well, and one thing that Tej and Harjuan, but Tej particularly, was always touting was the tantric energy, the Z force, the blue light, the tantric
Z force.
And I mean, look, we know that if we meditate, there are biophysiological changes that do occur, when we meditate, when we
How
do.
about much less if you stare into the eyes of another human person for
It's an
hours at a
experience.
time, something physiological happens in you. You don't have to even be, you could be saying blah, 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 blah. It doesn't even matter. But the fact that, this level of intimacy, you're sitting knee to knee next to other people. I mean, keep going. It's
But in a very, very, so there's all these there's a very strong structure, the rules, the very strong structure of this. So the lines, the geometry of it is real. We do have, we have heat coming off of our bodies, and there is, if you want to call it, electromagnetism. I mean, just simply being like this dense form of matter, whatever. I'm just talking biophysics, but there is something to being, as you say, knee to knee in these rows and a group together.
It's called misery. But go ahead. No, but what I want to point out is that there, once again, it's an ethos and a mythology where it's like, of course, you can extract certain things of like, oh, this helps with this and this is good. And yeah, of course, scientifically, we are electromagnetic field, all these types of things, right? But you put it into that setting, and it's casting or wielding a dynamic that makes you just want to be part of it more, right? It amplifies the energy.
Yeah. And we know that when a group gets together to meditate, it's a different experience. And when there's a commitment to sitting still and staying in it within the group, it becomes more kind of locked. It's a structure within which it's a scaffolding. It's holding a space for an experience to happen. I mean, it just is, and I feel like I'm probably talking in YB language again a little bit.
Right. It's all word salady. But I guess the point, I hear what you're saying. It's like,
it's a cool meditation. It's cool. I mean,
well, I can see why people think it's cool. Not all of us think it's necessarily cool, but I see why people would get it. And I want to point out that I went to 3 days worth for 3 summers in a row in European Yoga Festival. One of the things I witnessed was that these women facilitators, again, very graceful, gorgeous, like the typical, it's like the ones we idolized, ones I've idolized most of my life. So that have been my sisters, older sisters. So witnessing them up there and even like having Satsimran or Narinyan, like there's a lot of nostalgia for me. It brings back into the 80s. So I remember being in those tantric lines, but some of the things I would notice was where they would call people out, especially the older, they're more the senior
Mm.
teachers, but they would call out, like, say, young gens like me, and it wasn't me, but somebody else that was like, hey, that turban's not appropriate. Your forehead is showing, your hairline is showing too much. Go ahead and go fix that, and going on the energetic principles and how necessity has it that we have to follow it in this particular way. Oh, the line's a little crooked, blah, 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 and just ways of precision that really amplifies this mystical story that these women are on this stage literally channeling the Mahan Tantric, and then they would say what they're going to do what they do, then play YB, and then interpret what YB is saying for them. So there ends up becoming this kind of like golden chain mystical thing happening between the facilitator, the YB video, and what's transmitted into the room to the magical, mystical group consciousness that's happening.
In a very structured meditation, which is going to provide some kind of physical experience regardless. So, and we're all staring at these giant pictures, the giant mural or the giant projection onto the screen. We in LA actually had a projection screen of the Tradicum or some picture of Yogi Bhajan. So that's in every, if you look outside of the meditation, like if your eye happens to wander, like, what are you going to see? Him. Okay, I better get back in.
Also, pause. I also want to note that at all these tantrics, they played this marketing video of YB, and they had literally put together this gorgeous, incredible video of all of these pictures throughout the day. I saw my dad in the 70s doing yoga in the field in one of them. Like, talk about nostalgia. And they're literally, and the facilitators are actually amplifying these stories of what a wonderful
Yes.
person, this, in all of the grandpa ways. He was so funny. He would run out in his cachetas and go swim, and and they would show pictures of him half naked in a house turban, and then they would show another one on his, with President Clinton, and it was gorgeous with the overlay of Bountiful, Blissful, Beautiful by Porter Singer that they never asked her for her own rights.
I am.
Yeah. And then her new version of the I Am Bountiful, Blissful, Beautiful that she rocked. And again, it's a marketing piece that really, after meditating for the last hour and then on break, you got to just,
that's the first thing you see. Yeah. So and then again, you're in a spaced out state, and this is all you're being.
And then at the end of the tantric, there'll be like, if anybody wants to take Amrit, we'll be in the back, and you can come and take Amrit with all the Guru Sikhs. And blah, 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 blah. And so, like, literally it was quite palpable. I was like, wow, why is there such a fascination? And then all the young second gen and the Punjabi Sikhs running around in their Nahang turbans, looking like extra Sikhi and like perfect pathish. And I just remember thinking to myself, like, whoa, like, why wouldn't these students go running to be Nahang? Like, who doesn't want to ultimately marry the second gen or a Punjabi Sikh so you could be the ultimate wife? Go back and listen to episode 39, where Homegirl literally got told that was the ultimate path, that she could be marrying a Punjabi Sikh, taking Amrit, and she hadn't even been in for a year or something. I mean, it was nutty. Anyway.
And a lot of women did marry Punjabi Sikhs, and there was a couple that I can think of that went off to India and did do the whole Nahang thing. I actually went to Halla Mahalla in 2015, and I have some amazing photos of myself there with the Damala on and with all the young Nahangs. And again, it was really a cool experience for me, but it didn't feel like it was my destiny.
And what I wanted to say is it's a form of fetishization.
It totally was.
So if you don't know, that's what it's called. It's called fetishizing brown people and other cultures. And it's so built into the 3HO spiritual Sikh Dharma, Sikhi Pathy marketing. It's just, it's emoji in my mouth of pure puke to hear it. But to know that you were in it, and this is how you're resonating with what I'm saying, because I know this was exactly, students would come up to me and be like, you think it's safe? I'm thinking to take Amrit. I'm like, huh? Why?
And so I'm there at Hala Mahala, and these Nihang guys are, one of them had gotten some shastra that was like 400 years old. And they're sort of like the leader of the group there. And they were camping. They were literally camping in tents. And somebody had given me this bunga, this bungalow to stay in. And so I'm sleeping on the floor there, but it was the most comfortable. And we're out in the country, kind of like 6 kilometers outside of Anandapur Sahib. It was a really cool experience, like anthropologically, I have to say. But, here I am, this white woman, and they're like, oh my gosh, she reads Gurmukhi, she does Banis, like she's such a warrior, and look how she's dressed. And so anyway, they put together this whole presentation of this shastra for me, which was essentially like a very long sword, a very large kirpan that had come from some, fabled warrior 400 years prior there on that very sacred land. And they presented to me with all this Dasambani that I didn't even know. And they were like, this is for you. And all I could think was, I only have a carry-on bag. There's no way I can take this on all my flights going back to Los Angeles. So I was just like, I can't take this. I'm so sorry. Like, I'll wear it today, but like, I can't take this giant sword with me back to LA. And they were like, they were so confused and so devastated. And
Oh my God.
And then it was just, a lot of them didn't even speak any English. And it was,
This is such a sad story to me. I didn't mean to take you off of White Tantric, but I just really wanted to point out some of the dynamics of what she's talking about being in White Tantric, and kind of, it's not her coming up with that this energy is so powerful. It's like, this is actually what's taught, and a part of the dynamic of what is experienced at White Tantric that hooks people to come back and be a part of something that's so magical.
So I want to say,
life-changing.
I'll wrap up with 2 sort of things that happened to me in 2018. So this is the end of my, and my last White Tantric Yoga experiences. My last 2 White Tantric Yoga experiences was spring White Tantric LA 2018, and then December at the winter solstice, where I attended for 2 days of it. And at that point, it was more out of curiosity to kind of see, how I felt about things at that point. But when I did the one in Los Angeles that spring, it was always either the last week of March or the first week of April. I'm there in the tantric and I'm meditating, with the man who was my partner at the time. And it was so clear to me. It was just so loud and clear. I was getting the message. We're in the meditation. The message I was getting intuitively, whatever you want to call it, was there is no Mahan Tantric like you think. The Mahan Tantric is us. We are the Mahan Tantric. Everybody here who is participating in this experience and projecting this idea of this thought form of the Mahan Tantric, of this tantric force, of this thing, of this power, everybody who's participating in this, believing in this, being a part of this experience, that is what's creating what you're experiencing right now. And so therefore, all of us are the Mahan Tantric. It's you. It's the guy next to you. It's the guy you're meditating with. Like, we're literally agreeing upon in this collective reality, the Mahan Tantric and the Tantric energy. And that was so clear to me. And I wasn't really able to explain that to people in the community at the time, because they were like, you crazy girl, what are you talking about? That's not, there's Yogi Bhajan and Mahan Tantric, and we haven't seen the next Mahan Tantric yet. Maybe somebody will step in. There's some secret mythology about, Satsimran knows who the next Mahan Tantric is, and all of that.
That's what they say? That's what people say?
She has special instructions to know.
That's what she says?
Yes, she has special instructions that were given her by Yogi Bhajan for how to determine who the next Mahan Tantric is, supposedly.
Oh, Lord. Sat Simran, come forward and tell us the story.
Yes,
we want to hear the special formula for the next Mahan Tantric. Enlighten us.
And I still want to come visit you in Greece at Simran. It looks really beautiful. That's kind of cool that you're living there now. But anyway, so I got that message just so loud and clear. And then I didn't go to summer solstice because the bubble had been popped for me, and it was just that it wasn't going to happen at that point. And I had to leave LA because in the unveiling and the popping of the bubble and the understanding of everything, my whole reality was completely shattered.
Meaning you had already met on the way to solstice, you had met that one
In
secretary.
2016.
That was
Yeah.
2016. So then this is by 2018, you didn't go.
Where
to
I had
solstice.
read Pamela's manuscript, where I had
Yeah.
heard all these stories firsthand about how Hari Jiwan and his inner circle worked from the man I had been having a romantic relationship with. And I realized I was in a cult.
Yeah.
I realized I was in a cult, and I started doing cult research, and I started listening to cult podcasts, and that was when I had reached out to Rachel Bernstein in 2017 because I was like, I think I might be in a cult, but now I was like, fuck, pardon my French, but I have spent the last, however, 7.5 years of my life in a cult. And so I well recognized it by that point. And all my existence in Los Angeles up to then, aside from a small amount of time percentage, like I said, was still devoted to being in the acting and modeling kind of thing. Everything I was doing was 3HO related. And I had to get out. I had to leave it. I just couldn't be in that apartment, on those streets, even in my car driving, none of it. It was just too, I had to start something new. Wow. And my parents were living here in San Diego, and they were like, yeah, come live with us, And so that was the beginning of my, starting again. And I knew I needed a lot of therapy. So I, immediately got a therapist through my insurance, and I was doing, like I said, a lot of reading and listening to podcasts about cults and systems of control and unraveling and trying to understand everything and reflecting on it. And to be honest, for me, and everybody's process is going to be looking different, I was still working a couple of days a week teaching yoga in Los Angeles. I was driving up and actually teaching and then driving back, which was bonkers that I was doing that.
It is bonkers.
But other than that, I was doing some acting work on the side, but I wasn't really working. I wasn't doing much. Most of my day was spent in bed reading and crying and crying and crying and crying. There was an awful lot of grief. And it was what hit me was not only the grief of, as I mentioned before, the years lost, but it was all of the stuff that brought me in the first place in 2011, sort of the unprocessed grief, the unprocessed trauma of my life up to that point, but everything that I had been bypassing by just getting high and only focusing on the positive and the love and light and holding hands and swaying back and forth and singing Satnam Waheguru and everything, it just, all of that before, and then all of that I had not been addressing during that time, the huge wave came and slammed down on me. And it was heavy and it was a lot, but I also recognized that I needed to start feeling it and actually start processing it, and was working with a therapist to kind of start teasing apart everything and unpacking it. And it was a whole process. So last thing I'll say, I went to the winter solstice 2018 and did 2 days of the white tantric there. And again, I was kind of a tourist at this point. Like, let's just see what this feels like, putting the costume back on, which was kind of like, wow, here I am still. Okay. The turban that's so tight that I'm actually getting a headache, but it's like, it's loose around this part, the solar center, whatever, the 10th gate. So I'm feeling like, okay, I must be getting, all the download through my 10th gate, even though I have a headache around my temporal region because the damn thing is tied so tight around here, the way we do our, especially once you get that silk chuny wet and tie it on and everything. It's on there. You're strapped in. So I'm sitting there, I'm meditating, and I had started to do other meditations at this point. What really was resonating with me was just sit, like a Vipassana style, maybe focus on your breath, listening to the sounds around you, just silent meditation, old school, being in your body, meditating, being in the present moment, and just kind of being, sitting, noticing. And so I had been doing more and more of that. And the experience of the white tantra and then tantric yoga, whatever. And then when I really noticed it was on the breaks in between the kriyas, how rowdy and loud and sort of what I was recognizing was that this form of yoga, this kriya yoga that Yogi Bhajan taught is, and he would say, you know, this is to burn, this is to clear, this is tapas, whatever. But it was very, you know, kind of vata pitta, if you want to talk Ayurveda, but it was very, it was energizing and up and very almost discombobulating. It wasn't about actually sitting in, being present, observing, which is a very, very, very different kind of meditation. And so I'm sitting in the white tantric, and now I'm used to more like this observing, sitting still, kind of in consciousness, whatever you want to call it, that way. But everybody is, you know, like HUD, you know, and it's so loud and it's so fiery and it's so young and so, and it was overwhelming for me. And I was like, I don't resonate anymore with this very all over the place, very fiery style of yoga and meditation. And I understood and recognized that and what that's doing to the participants who are participating in it.
Mm, mm. So well said. I mean, there's just so many gold nuggets, gems, and just pure layers of diamonds that you just pulled out from this episode today. And the impact, right? The first of all, the yang, the over dominant in the masculine, the men being trained into women and the women being trained into men and the men being emasculated, the, you know, all these things that create this busy, active, addictive energy, right? This uplifted, I mean, there's just, there's so much here. So much.
And I want to say, you know, to everybody who I knew in the community who might be hearing this, who knew me, none of this is to say that I didn't genuinely and still do have a love for you. I mean, we connected as people, and you are still my best friends to this day. And we went through a lot together. Maybe it was a trauma bond, but we shared and we connected as people who may not have connected otherwise. And that's really cool. And I'm so grateful I got to learn so much about Punjabi culture and the actual Sikh religion, as a form of spirituality. I think it's so beautiful. And I learned so much. I mean, I learned Gurmukhi and all of these traditions and a lot about history and culture. And there's just a lot that was actually really cool and really good. And I do want to recognize and acknowledge that, aside from the other kind of trauma that I experienced.
Thank you for that too. And I also want to put it out to all listeners that the phases of deprogramming are real, right? She talked about just experiencing like just this heaviness of grief, right? It wasn't just the grief of the recognition of the cult itself, but it's the grief of the compounding interests of the stuff that wasn't dealt with prior to joining. And this is very cult informed. If you listen to any cult experts, they talk about you don't get to, you know, really heal and find your essential self until you revisit some of the issues that you had before you entered into the cult. And so I found that such a beautiful part of understanding our phases and stages. And I could really relate to you, Jules, in that I went through a heavy several years worth of grief. And then I went in through a phase where I couldn't practice anymore. And I had already been being guided not to teach. So, you know, it started 2012, 13, I'm grieving. And then 2014, 15, 16, I'm teaching, but then I got clear messages, stop teaching and stop practicing. And I didn't understand that, you know, because I'm so wound in. And the feeling, what you described about moving into the stage of learning to start noticing and paying attention to your body very differently. Unlearning is very different than learning. There can be really wonderful practices that are infused into the daily disciplines that we learned, but they're also infused or enmeshed with predatory, abusive, shame-based practices. And so to actually start to pull them apart and distill takes time, because we actually have to be willing to give ourselves space to feel and be with sensations that we've been trained out of and that we've been made to feel wrong for having. And so the complexity of that and the voices that show up in your head, the self-tyranny that's actually teachers that have been implanted into your psyche, these things are a real untangle. And Jules, you talked about your process. And all I'm doing here is for all of us to really understand, if you read the book Complex PTSD From Surviving to Thriving, you'll be able to start tracking some of the ways that you can be with stages of you and what deprogramming is really about, because we have to be away from systems for us to actually learn to locate ourselves again. Whew. And his first book, by the way, the CPTSD book, it's called The Tao of Fully Feeling. And so that's what made me reminded me of it, was when you said you went from the stage of just pure grief and just complete collapse to into stages of learning to feel and notice and just be still. And then there's next phases and there's next phases. And I'm not trying to tell you where you're at in your journey or any of us listening, but we have to become better at giving ourselves more spaciousness to feel compounded things that are stuck in us that we've been trained out of, possibly since birth.
Amen, sister.
Papa. Y'all, thank you for listening. I know we just went power packed here and we got some of the juiciest details that I just really appreciate. What it says to me, Jules, is your capacity to reflect, to share your process, both vulnerably, but also very poignantly. And you're part of the entanglement, because we actually can't detangle it until we get to begin to see what pulled us in, what helped us crave these experiences and keeps us stuck there. This stuff is real. There's not so much a right and wrong or a good or bad. It's so much more like, whoa, this is one big messy mess. And how did I get all up in it? So you illuminated it so well. Thank you for bringing us some 9 treasures and Hadi G1 Tej specifics, even some Golden Bridge specifics, the SSSC cabin specifics.
SSS, not C.
SS, yeah, exactly. The SSS cabin. It's that cabin that was, devoted for him, right at the solstice tantric, sent to the solstice site. I didn't even know it still existed until I heard about students like you, because I hadn't been back to solstice since I was 16.
Oh, I got pictures.
Oh my Lord. I know. I started noticing it from my own yoga students that came back all goo goo gaga about having gone to solstice, and suddenly they were getting tattoos on their body called Satnam and stuff. And I'm like, yo, you can, journal everybody. Thank you, Jules. Thank you, listeners. This has been another episode of the Uncomfortable Conversations podcast, the untold stories of the 3HO Kundalini Yoga community. Once again, if you want to donate to this broadcast and to support this work, please go to gurunishan.com/uncomfortable conversations, and you can make a one-time or ongoing donation. Thank you again. And if you want to be telling your story with me or have a conversation, send me an email at gn@gurunishan.com. Thanks so much. Please like, share, subscribe, and review this episode and share it with a friend. Talk to you soon.